Welcome to Visual Basic. We are going to get started with a program that is going to go through some of our good habits and some of the basics. This program will map out what our first basics quiz contains. There'll be 9 or 10 questions on there, and the answer to all of those questions will be contained in here. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio. And when you open up Visual Studio, this is a very important part of what we do. And by the time you've seen this video, you will have already done this a couple times, but in the event you haven't, we're going to want to go to File, New Project. And on New Project, my program defaults to Visual Basic. However, when you open up, you're very likely to be on Visual C#, and we want to go to Visual Basic. And we want to go to Windows Forms. We will probably exclusively do that for the duration of this semester. And very, very important, before you move on, if you go ahead and just select OK now, this is going to be saved not to your iDrive, but it'll be saved to the computer that you're on, and those computers get cleaned up every time they're reset. So you will lose your program. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to browse this. You'll have folders to browse this into. I'm going to go ahead and put this into my iDrive, into 2015-16 courses, into Visual Basic, and I'm just going to create a new folder here. New folder, and I'm just going to call it Basics. Select that one, and now I'm going to give this a name, and I think I'll just call the name of the program Just the Basics, and note that it's going to my iDrive, and I will still have that tomorrow. That is very overlooked and somewhat tragic, as sometimes people will lose an entire day's worth of work for this course, and you do not want to do that. So it's preparing, as we can see, and here's the environment that you're going to be working in. On the environment, you have the all-important form, and here's where you're going to design your program. You're going to put elements on here. Those elements will come from your toolbox. Very likely your toolbox will start out not pinned, and you'll see over here, hopefully, that we have toolbox. And I am in the constant habit of having my toolbox pinned, so I have access to look at all of these different things in here. Now, we will not learn during the course of this course. We will not learn what all of these do, and some people will work with some that others don't when we get to projects, but there are a primary few that we're going to go ahead and take a look at for the purpose of this very basic introduction. Okay, some things that you want to get very, very good at, creating good habits. One habit you want to have is, upon beginning your program immediately, this is my form right here. And you notice when my form is selected, and let me just put a button on here just to show you. Right now the button's selected, now the form is selected. Button selected, now the form. And if you look over to the lower right where the properties are, where I'm clicking, you'll see when the form is selected, there's properties for the form. And you can scroll through those, and we will use very, very few of these. We might change names of forms on programs eventually, but what we will always want to do is get in this good habit. This will be part of your grade on your quizzes and your assignments, is you'll want to go in and change not the name that says Form 1, but the text property that says Form 1. So the text property right now is what appears right at the top of the form, and we don't want a generic Form 1 there. So I'm going to go just the basics and good habits. And when I hit enter there, you'll see that my form now says just the basics and good habits on it. And that should be the first thing you do every time you open up a program. Now, this may not be the second thing you do, but this is a very good idea to do as soon as you get into what's called the code. And the code is in the background, and that's where you tell the form how to react or what information to put on the form. I'm going to go ahead and just double click on the button. If I double click on the button, it takes me into this little back world here where it says, hey, here's our form 1. You can open and close that. And here's what I want you to do when we click the button. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. I'm going to just delete what happens when we click that button right now. And here is good habit number 2. Every one of your programs you create is going to contain these 3 remarks, and probably more remarks as well. And how we create a remark is we enter an apostrophe. And after the apostrophe, what we put there, everything should be green. And your first remark should be your name. Your name goes here. Doesn't really matter how I type that, because when the program runs, anything that follows an apostrophe will be ignored by Visual Basic. And another apostrophe. The second that goes here, the second line of code will be the name of this program. So ours was just the basics. I should probably do this. Name of your program. Who knows? This may be on the quiz. Hint, hint. And the third will be the date which it's completed. I'm just going to say, I'm going to say 6/4/2019 was our completion date on this. It's going to be very patriotic there, I believed. But I guess that would be 7/4 if I'm being really patriotic. Okay, so those are remarks. Those will be included for you to get full credit on your assignments. It's your name, the name of your program, and the completion date of your program. That way, when I come in on Sundays and I look through people's programs, I go into your iDrives, I take a look at programs. If and there's 25 of you in here, if I open up somebody's file, I may forget who I'm on, but if I go into your form, I'll always know who you are, what program this is, and this gives me some idea of the progress you're making, so we keep track of that as well. Okay, so that's good habit number 2. Let's see, good habit number 3. I'm going to take this button, well, I'll leave this button on because we're going to use it. When we put an item on the form, and I'm going to put some on here, we should get in the habit, if we're going to refer to it in our code, of giving it a proper name. And I'm going to take a look at our naming conventions just by going to our website here. And here's our website, and it's not really totally necessary, you know that address, but we'll talk more about it. You've probably already seen it if you're taking this course. But here is our control naming. Now the controls, back to Visual Studio, the controls are the items over here in your toolbox. And I'm going to name this button appropriately so it has something to do with what the control actually is. You'll understand why we do that at a later time, but let's go back here. So naming controls. There are far more controls than just these. These are the ones that we will probably use for this course most frequently. And some of you will have, we'll use some other ones. Some might not use all of these. But you can see the prefix for a control that's just, say, a button or a command button. For our prefix name of that button, we will have it named BTN, and then what it does. And now this is important, and it seems like it's going to seem kind of like minutia. Why do we have to be exact? We're all going to live in kind of the same world, and when we look at each other's programs, we want to be speaking the same language. So the first 3 letters are these abbreviations for button, and anybody in here, your program, if you have a button on there, it should be called BTN something, and then something appropriate after that. Notice the BTN, no capitals. The next letter will be capitalized, and if there's multiple words, as you see here on this common dialog, DLG for dialogue, file, open, each new word capitalized. But LBL help message, LBL, the L is lowercase, the H, the M are capitalized. LST, policy codes. So that is something that I'm going to be really strict on, that we're going to use proper naming functions. Okay, let's get back to our program. We're going to come back and look at variable naming shortly, but let's get back to our program. And so we're going to create a program, the classic first program that was ever made in computer programming, just told the user hello world. So we're going to use a label. Let's find our label here. You can either click and then drag it out, or you can go ahead and just drag it on there, and you'll see I'm going to increase the font on this just for viewing reasons, but label is selected over here in our properties. It shows our three objects, the form, the button, the label. We want the label. I'm just going to increase its font. By the way, my personal preference is always to be alphabetized rather than have these kind of grouped based on their behavior, the font. You can do whatever you'd like on that. I just like them alphabetized. So let's go to font and just make it a little bit easier to see here. I'm going to go ahead and make this be a font of 18. Okay, now my very first goal, and this label is something that I'm going to be referring to in code because I'm going to change the text in this from currently it's label 1. I'm going to change the text to say hello world, so I'm going to be working with it in code. So I'm going to go ahead and give this thing a proper name, LBL, and I might just call it hello world, but I'm going to call it message, and you'll see why. So proper naming, lowercase LBL, capital M, message. This is my message label. Okay, and this button, let's go ahead and change its font, make it easier to see what's going on here. Its font, we'll make it 22, and I'm going to change its text because we wouldn't want to. Here's what happens when we run the program. I run the program. When I run the program, I probably don't want to see this just say label 1, kind of generic, and I probably don't want this generic button 1. So I'm going to change button 1. I'm going to change two things about it. First off, my good habit, its name is going to be BTN, and I'm going to call it BTN greeting. And its text property, button 1's text property, instead of saying button 1, is going to say greeting. Or greetings. Greetings, not good. Try that again. Okay, so there's greetings. And label 1, I'm going to trust that it appears here. And if you notice, things will line up for you if you choose. But I'm just going to have this label right here. I might even come back and make that font bigger after I run it. But I'm actually going to take that label and I'm going to change its text temporarily just to ... So here's the deal. When I click on this greetings button greeting, I want this guy's text property to change from ... into hello world. And here's how we do it. Let's take a look. I'm going to double click on greetings. That gets me into, I'm also going to put this up at the top. I'm also going to note that, look, it says, here's what happens when BTN greeting is clicked. And what I want to affect is I want my, remember, LBL message, I want to change its text property. Its text property right now is down here, ... Here's how we do that. I'm going to go LBL, and any label I have on there would be access. Once we've got this blue, and it's the right item, you can just hit tab. All right, here's a biggie. Every control that you refer to in code, and our label is a control. You can think of a control as an object that's on the form or the form itself. When you use it in code, you're going to want to put a dot or a period after it. We typically say dot. As soon as I go dot, these items are the items that are in the property box over here. The one I want to affect is text. And there's text. I could double click on it, and I want that text to equal, since it's going to be words, I'm going to put in quotations, hello world. So when I click the button, I'm going to be changing the LBL message text property to say hello world. And that's a good time to let's give this thing a shot. This is just kind of an ode to the very first program ever created in computer programming. So if we hit start, notice it won't do it now. We have to start the program. And I click this, and there's our greeting, hello world. And sure enough, I think I want this font to be a little bit more dramatic. So let's go ahead and let's go back to font. Let's change that to be quite a bit bigger. And I'm going to have no text whatsoever in it to begin. All right, you probably know what's about to happen. Start the program, greetings, hello world, there we go. Okay, now another item that's really useful for the user is what's referred to as a shortcut key. And a shortcut key would be something like if I just hit the letter G and not click on greetings, not click the button, it would activate that button. And to do that, on the button's text property, you put an ampersand, which is an and symbol, which is Shift 7, in front of the letter you want it to be the shortcut. And when I click off of that, you'll notice it gives us a tip here that, hey, G is a shortcut key. So when I run this, it doesn't have the underline there, which sometimes I wonder why not. So I could hit the button to get greetings, or without hitting the button, mouse clearly to the right. Trust me, I'm about to hit G. I hit G in 1, 2, 3. Hello world. That's a really nice feature, and it's one, and you don't have to use Control G. You might be used to that, like working in Microsoft Office suite, but just a G. Worth noting at this time. Well, I'll note it another time. We have another option for that. So there's our greeting button. I'm just going to move things around a little bit. I'm not forgetting I have a label up here. In fact, that's why for the label text, sometimes I'll leave a ... in it, just so I remember where it's at. There's other ways of handling that. But let's go ahead and add another button. And you have choices. You could just come up here, select another button, put it on. Or if you've got something formatted or sized the way you like it, such as this, you can Control-C, Control-V, copy-paste. Notice this one's named Button Greeting, but this one's just named Button 1. It's a new Button 1. I'm going to change its text property to be my school. And I'm going, notice I got the space in there because I want the space where it says it on the button. And then BTN, see if you can guess what I'm going to name it. Lowercase BTN, MY, capital M, SCHOOL. So these things go together. And now when I click it, I've got another place for button my school. You'll see this a lot from me. Control-C, Control-V. I'm going to have the LBL message be Hananiga. I lost the L here. I didn't get that one copied. Okay, that's one nice thing about, just one more nice thing about Visual Basic. is if you get little red underlines, you have some reason to be concerned. All right, let's give this a shot. So my school, Hananiga, greetings. My school, Hananiga. Hit the G, got it. Greetings. I don't have a shortcut key for this one yet. Here's what's worth noting. On the text property, anywhere in there I could put the ampersand. I could put it before this S for school. I could actually, and then S would be my shortcut. I could actually, if I wanted to, for whatever reason, I could put ampersand in front of that Y, which seems a little bit weird. I run it. Trust me, I'm about to hit a G, 1, 2, 3. I'm about to hit a Y, 1, 2, 3. And I can go back and forth. Typically, if you have 1 or 2 buttons, it's not really worth it, but if you've used Word a lot and you control S and you control P, you do those kind of things. You control C, control V. Shortcut keys are really nice options for us to have. Okay, and then I'm going to create one more button on here. And let's go ahead and control C, control V. This one is going to be our goodbye button. I'm not going to close the program with it. You'll see what we're doing here. So I'm going to name it BTN goodbye. And down here, just to show you these words don't have to match, I'm going to say, let's see, have a good, let's make that great day. And we're just going to make that button a little bit bigger to fit it in there. And I may rethink that, have all the buttons the same size, but we'll talk about cosmetics of a form at another time. But anyway, have a great day. I guess I could have just said goodbye. And so I want, let's go ahead and put our ampersand on there. Now, here would be the deal. I would not want to put an ampersand in front of the G on great deal because I've already got G being declared to this button. So I will ampersand H on have a great day. Ampersand H. We're going to double click that button. We're going to change this. Actually, you know what? I think I want this to be have a great day. We'll see how that works out. I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to change this to be our goodbye. G-O-O-D ampersand B-Y-E. Okay. So, goodbye button. LBL message, have a great day. Let's see what we've got here. I've got shortcuts of G, Y, and B. Here goes, in that order, G, Y, B, or by button. Okay, so that handles shortcut keys. Want to make sure to talk about tooltips. Tooltips are pretty awesome. If you look, I'm going to float over the start button, and down below it, it says, hey, this is going to start. I float over tools, nothing, test, nothing. But some of the other things here, if I float over them, they're going to give me some kind of hint what's going on there. Now, we won't use tooltips all that often, but just to show you, if I click on greetings or my school or goodbye, and I look alphabetically, tooltip is not in this list for any one of them. But once I bring tooltip and try to drop it on the form, it puts it down here. And now if I go back to goodbye, there is tooltip. Interesting, nothing in there. I go to my school, tooltip, greetings, tooltip, and I'm going to create a tooltip for our greeting. create a message. And that's for greetings. Now when I run the program and float over greetings, there's our tooltip. It'll create a message. Or I could say click to create message. Most definitely worth noting and remembering, you only need to put a single tooltip on a form. That same tooltip will be good for any control on there. Here's tooltip. See you later. I run this program. I've got greetings. My school doesn't have a tooltip. Goodbye does. See you later. Okay. I'm going to add to this form now because I want to talk about other variables. Not going to talk about picture boxes today. That's in another video. But I am going to go ahead and I'm going to add on some labels underneath here. I am going to refer to this one in code, and you'll actually I'm going to show you a different option to this. I'm going to put in text boxes and show you one common problem people have. I'm going to put a text box here. I'm going to Control-C, Control-V. I'm going to put a text box underneath here, and I'm going to put a text box underneath here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep track of how many times each of these buttons have been activated. So if I hit greeting 6 times, hopefully there's going to be a 6 put in underneath here. So that's going to be kind of sneaky. So this is going to be, I'm going to name this one txt lowercase greetings. Did I put 3 E's in there? Nope. Greetings. I'm going to name this one txt school. Try to. I was in the wrong spot. txt school. And I'm going to name this one txt goodbye. All right, this is kind of sneaky. Now, what I need is I'll need a variable like in algebra, an A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. I'm going to need some variable to keep track of my number of times each of these things happen and put that number here. All right, let's go ahead and jump back into our code. I'm going to get there. You can either click up here, or you could just double click on an item and it just sends you into that particular item. My cursor sent me here. And I'm going to create variables. And before I do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump back to our website and we're going to look at variable naming. Guys, there are a lot more variables than Boolean, decimal, integer, and string, but we are primarily going to work with decimal, integer, string. You'll see Boolean from time to time. Boolean is just a variable that switches back and forth between true or false. Now, your book will use these naming conventions a little bit differently, but here's what I'm going to request and require. The naming conventions change from time to time. Just like the other naming convention, the first 3 letters, BOL, DEC, INT, and STR, are going to identify what the variable type is. A decimal, I think we know what a decimal and an integer is. A string is typically words. However, a phone number would be considered a string because it's not really acting numerically. We wouldn't be adding and subtracting phone numbers. Okay. Oh, this DLG, by the way, should be STR. I think I've updated that on the website. I just haven't published the new update. So this should be STR right here, as you can see. So same naming conventions, 3 letters. If there's multiple words after that describing what the variable's standing for, then we're going to go ahead and capitalize each of those. Okay, so let's jump back into our program, and I'm going to create variables. We're going to talk more about different ways variables work, but up here, to do that, I'm going to go private. I'm going to go int integer, and then I'm going to go greetings capital. I'm going to go comma int school, comma int goodbye, and I'm going to dimension those as integers, as integer. And what you want to think of is like they're variables, they're just storage items. They're items that are set to store integers. You know, it's like int greetings is waiting to keep track of an integer. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go, every time we click greetings, I want to add 2 to the number that is in int greetings. And we do that with int greetings. Notice if you start typing it, it's going to predict what you're trying to say. Plus equals 1, which is kind of mysterious. This means exactly the same as, I'm putting in a remark here. The remark doesn't have to be there for this to work. It means exactly the same thing as int greetings equals int greetings plus 1. And that seems really weird because algebraically that could never be true. But this means store in int greetings, in that variable, what the variable was plus 1. It's used so often we have a special plus equals command for it. And then I'm going to take that value and I'm going to put it into the text box. The txt greetings dot text equals, I don't need quotations now because it's not a word, in greetings. Let's take a look at that. I'll put a space in here just to give us a break. Our 2 new lines of code here. Again, the remark does not matter. So let's run here, and I'm just going to hit greetings a few times. There's greetings. And sure enough, every time I click greetings, it adds 1 to it. Now, things we could change, we could center these out. But I will tell you this, something we wouldn't want to do, we wouldn't want the user to come in here and be able to put information in there. So it's acting like a text box. The nice thing about text boxes is they're really easy to size and control the way you want. I think I am going to increase their font so we can see it a little bit better. Notice I selected all 3. I'm going to go to their font. Let's make it a little bit larger. And then let's go ahead and they have a text align. I think I'm probably not going to text align left. I'm going to text align center those, and I think I might even make them all a little bit smaller. It seemed like a little bit of overkill. And then I'm also going to keep the user from being able to type in there. I'm going to either enable them to be false, or I'm going to set their read-only property to false. Let's see what this does. Let's run this. Greetings. Yeah, see, notice I can't click in here. I'm trying to click right now, and I can't type in there. So the nice thing about that is it's really easy to control the size, where the label is not so easy. I didn't mean to double-click that. Where the label takes a little bit more work. I'm going to take that text property out of there. Okay, so let's go ahead and handle my school. Every time my school's happening, we were putting this in there, but now I'm going to go int school plus equals 1 and into txt school dot text. Remember, this int school is a variable within. It doesn't need a dot after it. The txt school lives on the form. txt school is right here. If it's on the form, it needs a dot after it. In this case, we're doing text. And into there, I'm going to put int school. And let's see. int goodbye dot text. It's on the form. Is going to equal, whoops, int is not on the form. Int goodbye plus equals 1 and txt goodbye dot text equals int goodbye. And we run this now. and we switch between and we've got a lot going on there. Okay, control and code. I want to make sure I talk about that. We've got it. And I want to make certain that I've got everything that is taken care of on your quiz here. We talked about tooltips. We talked about our controls, how we name those in code with dots. We've got variable naming. We've got control naming. We've got always put text property. And one more thing that every form is going to contain. If we go back to our form, I'm just going to Control-C, Control-V. We're always going to have an exit button, which you might think, well, why would we need an exit button when we have an X there? Good question. If we ever save this as an executable file, that button will not be part of it. So probably a really good habit to get into would be right away we're going to go ahead and put an exit button in there. So I'm going to call this one BTN exit. I'm going to give its text property. I'm going to call it exit. A lot of times people will put an ampersand before the X here. Sometimes I don't do that on the exit button because it's like I don't want somebody to inadvertently hit an X and close out a program, but it's there for right now. And now, when I run this, we think, hey, everything's working well. I'm ready to use my exit button. And I told it it's the exit button, so it's going to exit, but it does not exit. I didn't tell it in code to exit. So double click. To exit a program, you just use the command word end. We'll have an exit button on every program we create. And there we have it. So you should be ready for the quiz at this time. You may want to review back through this. We'll talk about it in class. The quiz is not a one-time option for you. If you don't get all the questions correct, you'll be offered a quiz second, third time, but you can only score the 9 out of 9 or 10 out of 10, whatever it is, on the first try. After that, maximum would be 8 out of 9. You can still get a letter grade of virtually an A on it, but one shot. So if you don't feel like you're completely ready, you may want to go back through, check this out again, take a note or two, and good luck.